Hey there, I'm Greg Nicotero.
Hi, my name is Coleman Domingo.
Hi, I'm Benai Garcia.
Hi, I am Mo Collins.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik, Igrihe, and Ryan.
Hey now, and this is episode 105 of the Cinik Radio Podcast. And I'm your host and the windmill cancer of podcasting, Cinik. And joining me, as always, my very own Night's Watch, Igrihe, Ryan, and Kim. And we're here to break down Season 8, Episode 1 of Game of Thrones entitled Winterfell. Winter is here, so don't forget to smash that like button and smash that subscribe button. And if you're a YouTube addict like I am, go ahead and hit that notification bell as well for all the latest happenings in Westeros every week here on the Cinik Radio Podcast. But more importantly, enjoy the show. After 595 long days of waiting, Game of Thrones has made its long-awaited return, and based off of everything I've seen on social media and the rest of the interwebs, it's more popular than ever. 17 million people watching it live, on top of the countless others DVRing it and fire-sticking it illegally. Winterfell was an episode that covered tremendous amounts of ground in a short period of time and set the stage for the wars to come. Kim, despite those rebels on Facebook who proudly claim they've never seen an episode of Game of Thrones, insert eye roll here, have you ever witnessed as much excitement or anticipation over a TV show?
No, I can't. My newsfeed was completely flooded with people that had spent the last several weeks just getting caught up. I guess peer pressure from all of their friends telling them, "Oh, it's a great show. You gotta get caught up. You gotta watch this." And it was spectacular. It was awesome.
Yeah, I've gotten half the people at my job to watch it just by, always talking about how great it is. And it really is a great show all the way around. I watched episodes of Game of Thrones and I can't ever pick out something or an episode even, that I really don't like, let alone a scene where I'm like, it's just such intense, well-rounded writing. How about you, IG? I mean, this type of excitement's usually reserved for the next big Star Wars film or the next blockbuster Marvel film, but this is a TV show, and it's a season premiere nonetheless.
Well, but it's the season premiere of Game of Thrones, and like you said, it was nearly a 2-year wait to get here. And where they left us, everybody was just chomping at the bit to get here. And you know what? The wait was well-deserved, and I'm glad we waited because it looks like they really put out everything to make it right. They're really doing a good job. This first episode was amazing, and before, during, after, my news feeds were going just batshit with Game of Thrones, and I just love seeing that because every other blockbuster, every other TV show, everything else always has a portion of the people that are the haters. The only haters on this one are people say, "Oh, I never watched it." There's nobody talking smack about those that do watch it. There's nothing bad to say because it's well written, the production value is high, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Those memes bother me not because they're insulting the show. They don't know. Those memes bother me because they're proud of ignorance and they don't realize how great this product is and what they're doing on a weekly basis. And meanwhile, they're probably watching the Kardashians or some sort of garbage TV like that. Some of the best TV that's probably ever been done is happening, and they're just kind of turning a blind eye to it just because. You're not hurting me. You're just hurting you. As we open the episode, we see a young unnamed child struggling to look at the unsullied army. It definitely was a callback to Arya and Bran in the pilot, trying to get a good look at the royal procession as they kind of cruised into Winterfell. But Ryan, are well-written shows like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones really just a game of callbacks?
It's tricky because you don't want to, there's a lot of callback and fan service in any of these, but they're always kind of towing that line of being almost too in your face, because then it takes you out of it a little bit. But, with that being said, I loved that opening scene because I love the callback. I love the music, and that it was kind of a take on the music from the pilot episode, but just slightly different. And, that it was another little kid and Arya was there, and it was, Jon and Dan. It was just the whole scene was really well done. And yeah, I loved that opening kind of callback to the pilot episode. For me, that worked really well. It took me out of it in a good way because I was like, wait, that's the music from the pilot. Wait, it's the same kind of scene. That's awesome. It's a great callback. So I think in that way it worked really well, but you're always kind of towing that line of not giving too much fan service and too many callbacks to previous things. And then it almost, again, it takes you out of it, makes it feel like you're almost too manufactured.
Yeah, I love the way that everything kind of ties together, and they did that with Breaking Bad. And the show I always go to where it feels like they ran out of ideas and they were just throwing stuff to stick it to the wall was Lost. Lost started out strong. It was a great premise. And then by, season 3, it was all over the place as if they kind of just ran out of ideas and they weren't sure where we were going to go with the stories. Watching that show was like following a drunk driver at points. But with Breaking Bad, definitely with Game of Thrones, everything ties together. Every little detail, people show back up. The young boy and girl, the Karstark and the Umber from last season showed up again. Everything is a linear line, and I really enjoy that. IG, we got some really great acting this episode, and we see it pretty much from the start as Arya watches the parade as she runs through the gamut of emotions, as she sees a lot of familiar faces, from Jon to the Hound and then Gendry, and lastly, the dragon flyby. Were you right there with her emotionally as she was watching this?
Oh, absolutely. I felt almost like I could be Arya in that moment because I was just in awe watching everything walk by, just knowing that we're getting so many of these people that started this whole series together back together. And then everything that has happened to Arya, especially, she's been through so many things and now is probably the single most dangerous person in the entire show, as far as I'm concerned anyway. She's going to have opportunities to reconnect with people like the Hound. And I think that even with the little bit we saw in this episode, they're going to have quite a bit more to say to each other. And I don't think it's all going to be bad. I just was so excited. And then just to see the glee on her face, because I remember her in the basements at the Red Keep, walking around seeing the huge skulls of dragons. And now she saw a dragon fly overhead and got to finally see a dragon. It's like glee just leapt from her at that moment, and she was so happy. She is really becoming a very accomplished actor because she started this very young. She's doing very well.
Yeah, it always reminds me of what Tywin said to Joffrey. If you're the king, you don't need to tell people that you're the king or you're not the king. With Arya, she isn't really letting on to people what she's done or where she's been. And she's just like this little badass. At any point, like a ninja lurking, she can strike. And I just loved the look on her face when she saw those dragons fly by. I mean, everybody else is crouching and kind of cowering, and she just kind of smiles. That was a really priceless scene. And you're right, Macy has become quite an actress throughout the course of the show. I never really thought that much of her, but the last couple seasons, as she's becoming more of an adult, she really has kind of come into her own. We were there. We felt the distrust, the unease of the Northerners. And I mean, can you blame them? They've been through a lot over the last couple years. But the, oh, really, bitch moment was when Dany unleashed her best foot forward towards Sansa, and she promptly stepped on it. Kim, is there any hope of these two very intelligent, strong-willed leaders of men ever getting along and coinciding?
I don't see it happening. I think they're both type A personalities, and I think they both have their own agendas for what it is they're wanting to see happen for the good of the land and their own perspective of it. I just don't see them as individuals that are going to happily coexist. They may passively do it, just as out of respect and in order to keep peace, if that ever does finally come to fruition. But I don't know. I just don't see it.
Ryan, you've done a lot of sparring and fighting, and you're around a lot of alpha type personalities. Sansa was giving a lot of looks up and down, sideways glances, kind of looking at Dany in a way like, yeah, if situations were different, maybe this would go a different way. What do you think? Do you think they'll ever have a chance of getting along?
I don't know. I think there's so many variables at play right now. I think, one thing that to consider is like what happens when they really see, the Night King and the threat from the north. I think that's maybe enough to bring everybody together, including Cersei, though that is unlikely to happen. But I think, especially since she's so far away and so disconnected from everybody else. But I think that could bring them together, but I think different personalities, they have different agendas, they have different goals. I don't see them ever being friends, but, I could see a world where Daenerys goes to King's Landing and Sansa kind of can stay up in the north and just, deal with it. But there's certainly a lot of tension, and they're building that tension, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. But I think until they fight the White Walkers and the Night King, all of it is moot. And I think it's interesting to see kind of Jon Snow try to convince everybody of that, and people still not quite take him seriously. So I think once we get past that, we'll know a little bit more.
it was right away, too. They're like, you left Winterfell the king and you came back. I'm not even sure what you are anymore. It took no time for the North to get all the way up Jon Snow's ass about this. I mean, Ryan, obviously, Lyanna Mormont wasn't wrong. He abandoned his crown as quickly as Joe Dirt's parents did at the Grand Canyon. But the end of the world is upon us. I mean, why are we all caught up in titles still?
Yeah, I think that's the issue, is that I think Jon Snow is a different level, of human. And, he's a Stark. And he puts his honor before everything. And that, I don't think they understand that he's trying to save everybody. And I just don't think they understand the threat and what's at stake. Yeah, I think they will find out. And then I think, that'll be a game changer. And that'll be a point where a turning point for a lot of people. It's hard to really predict what's going to happen because there's a threat looming. And until they see it and deal with it, and we see the aftermath and who survives and who doesn't, none of it really matters.
IG, is it time that we drop the crown and the titles and kind of get ready for what's coming? I mean, the people of the North, if anybody, should know that the threat is real, right?
Well, you'd think they would, just through all the tales that they've all been told their whole life. Because, I mean, we saw way back in the early episodes of them talking of the White Walkers and everything. Problem is no one has ever seen one. And he's there telling them that they exist and that it's happening. But until they see what's going to come, they're just doing their thing. And just like anybody in any world, when change is thrust upon you that you didn't want, they're all going to hold that and wonder for at least a little bit, why are we allowing this to happen? We gave this guy the title. We said that we would believe in him. And now we brought this lady and her army back and bent a knee to her. I understand the people. I understand what they're trying to get at, but I think that they just need a little exposure to the rest of it.
I think there was a really great moment with Sansa and Daenerys where Sansa says she's talking about, I'm not prepared to feed all of these people. What do dragons eat exactly? And Daenerys looks at her like, whatever they want. Like, is this what you're hung up on? You're concerned about petty stuff. You're not concerned about the big picture. There is a war coming and you haven't seen any piece of it yet. And you're sitting here worried about what an animal is going to eat. And I thought that was more of a powerful statement than other friends that I know that were watching the same scene, were, messaging back and forth at the same time. But it shows that Daenerys has the big picture in mind. And I think that Sansa has been so stuck having to deal with all these individual fires and one little, petty issue, one right after another, just hitting her back to back, that she can't see the big picture yet, really.
Well, I took it a little bit as a veiled threat, like, they could eat redheaded snarky bitches, whatever they want, whatever I tell them to eat. And based off the Night King's army, there isn't going to be all these people around too shortly. What do you think, IG?
Lest we all forget, the biggest thing going on here is we need to remember that it took a large portion of last season to convince Daenerys to come with her army to stop this invasion from coming. It really isn't new to her, but it took a long time to get her to come along anyway. So everybody here, this is all brand new to them. It's like day 1, day 2. It took weeks for him to convince her, and it took literally having to bring one of the White Walkers back to get other people involved. These people are really just kind of missing the point, and Sansa especially, because and it's not her fault. She's really been just kind of beat up with everything with Ramsay and everything with Littlefinger. It's been a lot going on for her. So I understand her reticence to just jump right into the next thing just because Jon says so, because she's been really through the ringer. But she'll come around, I'm pretty sure.
Well, and her wheelhouse is kind of governing. It's not war. So, she doesn't realize that most of these people that we are looking at, we're not going to have to worry about feeding them for more than a week, and it's going to be over for them. But IG, more importantly, many underestimated you, and most of them are dead. I used to think you were the cleverest man alive. Those two statements between the Lady of Winterfell and the Hand of the Queen are telling in many ways. But we're both huge Tyrion fans. What's happened to our boy since he's become the Hand? Has he lost his edge? And has Sansa surpassed him in this battle of wits?
Maybe it's only because the only one he's had to play wits with is a a eunuch, and that slowed it down because he just keeps coming back to the same old jokes. I think he's just really trying to play a little bit nice right now because he did kind of have that forced marriage with Sansa. He's not trying to be too direct and everything as to not scare her off. That's my belief. For right now, he's really just trying to play peacemaker. And he's going to assert himself, and the cleverness will resume from Tyrion. This is just kind of a one-off and just trying not to upset the apple cart as the new gang in town.
But during the war with the Lannisters, believing that Cersei's coming to the rescue, I mean, Ryan, do you believe that Tyrion's kind of a step behind everybody else at this point?
So that whole line and exchange is almost, there was a meta aspect to me, and I don't know if the Double Ds were writing it with this in mind, but I don't think they know how to write Tyrion. Having read the books, and I don't want to get into this. Oh, the books were that better, but I mean, Tyrion is a really interesting character, and he's maybe the most interesting character, especially the way he's written throughout the books. And I think we get him pretty much to Daenerys in the books, but that's it. That's where his character's, to me, gone downhill, is once they had to write Tyrion for themselves without the benefit of kind of George R.R. Martin's work. I think they lost their way. And so I think that as a character, he's just not written all that well. He's not as witty. He's not as interesting. He's just kind of meandering along. And so I think there's kind of a meta aspect to that. Like he isn't the cleverest man because for whatever reason, I don't think they're really able to write him well. And more than anything, I think what really stood out to me was just how Tyrion is really taking a backseat to everyone else. And I think, again, it's a situation where I just don't know that they know how to really write that character and really do him justice.
Well, it might be one of those things, too, where somebody's drunk and they can play the piano. They've pretty much sobered Tyrion up, and maybe he's just not that interesting when he's sober. Maybe he's like just a boring guy, and that's why he started to drink to begin with. The reunion we all, at least me, but I think everybody else has been waiting for, was Jon and Arya, and they are finally back together. It was touching, but it took an unexpected turn, as it appears the faceless assassin is going full team Lady of Winterfell. Now, Kim, did you ever think she's the smartest person I know would ever come out of Arya's mouth in regards to Sansa? And are the sisters convinced that Jon Snow truly knows nothing?
I think after the exchange with Littlefinger and how Sansa was kind of the judge, jury, and Arya was the executioner of everything at the end of the last episode. The way that all of that played out, I think it painted a different picture in her head. And there was a scene where she's having a conversation. Sansa is having a conversation with Tyrion, and she says, "I'm a slow learner, but I learn." It's like she's getting it now. She's understanding. After everything that she has been through and all of the crap that she's had to put up with, she's getting just how screwed up everyone is. And she's, kind of putting everything into play. I think it was brilliant writing, but I think that when those words came out of her mouth, I think she meant that. I genuinely feel like she was there. She was a part of that in the scene right before she, sliced his throat. And I think the way that all of that had played out, it was just chilling. And I think she genuinely believed it when she said it. She believes in her sister.
Well, I mean, if you can outfox Littlefinger, that's got to get you enough experience points to get you up at least 3 or 4 levels on the Game of Thrones timeline. IG, did it kind of surprise you that we saw that they were working together? They exchanged pleasantries at the end of the last season. I mean, are you surprised that they're kind of a cohesive team now? Seeming when we started, they couldn't stand to be in each other's presence for more than a few minutes.
I think the biggest thing that's happening is they're each using the other one's strengths, and that makes up for each one of their weaknesses, because Arya has obviously become a very accomplished killer. She's everybody's favorite little psychopath, and she does a great job at it. But she's not going to be the one that's going to publicly call out the corruption. She's not going to be the one to stand in front of a group of people, lay it all out on the line for people. She's going to sneak up behind you in the dark and kill you. But things like this needed someone out front to expose the corruption so that other people saw it. And that's Sansa's strong point. Sansa's not going to be killing people or doing acrobatic things and putting on other people's faces. It's just not going to happen. They need each other, so it's turned from they can't stand each other to more of a symbiotic relationship. And I think it's a beautiful thing because they have matured so much through the show and they recognize each other, both as sisters and as something that they need for each other, just hopefully for the sake of survival of Winterfell and the Starks.
Meanwhile, at King's Landing, we find out two things about Cersei. She doesn't just like elephants, she loves them. And she's also the world's worst player at hard to get. In a pinch, I guess a little Euron will most certainly do. I guess if the lights are dim enough, he's kind of sort of got blonde hair. But anyway, Ryan, are those two a match made in villainy? And was Jaime just a little too light side for his sister? And do you think her plan is going forward? She may go on Maury and just claim that the baby is a Greyjoy?
Well, what I'm convinced about is, so they made a big deal about Tyrion knowing she was pregnant because she wasn't drinking. But then she was drinking, so is she still pregnant? And then if so, then that's kind of a continuity error. Then, like, why was she not drinking then, but she's drinking now? So, I'm kind of confused and wondering, because they really didn't go into it. They didn't touch on it. I kind of thought when Qyburn in early on was like, I have terrible news, that he was going to say something about it. So I'm a little confused. But yeah, their match, it's weird. I like Euron a lot as a villain. I like Cersei as a villain. I think they're great as villains. But I don't know. I just can't get into this matchup. And to me, it strikes me as not in Cersei's character, to kind of allow him to win like that. If she, let's say she did desire him, you'd think she'd wait a little bit and not let him be so kind of demanding and kind of get his way. So I thought it was a little strange and maybe a little out of character, but it is what it is. I
really thought it killed the chemistry between the two of them, because I thought the chase and the back and forth was the most important thing. And the fact that she gave in, I've read the books as well, and she's kind of promiscuous in the books. She slept with like half the King's Guard and, anybody with the last name Lannister or L in the beginning of their last name. But I didn't like that. And I thought Euron took a step back as a villain. And Kim, you and I discussed that today with the memes flying all over the internet with, am I as good as they are? Did I measure up? Yeah. What do you think?
If you want a whore, buy one. If you want a queen, you earn her. And that was short-lived,
Quips are expensive,
I know. There's this moment where she's, after the dramatically awkward moment where he puts a hand on her belly and he says, I'm going to put a prince in there. And then he walks out of the room and she has this look like it's, you're right. She is holding a glass of wine. I never saw her drink from the cup though. I was paying really close attention to that. What I found interesting was the look she had was somebody who was devastated, as if though she knew she was lying. She's not pregnant, but she's really kind of hoping that this would play out. And from the opposite perspective, maybe she can then tell her brother that it's his, like maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. She's one screwed up lady.
In Westeros, you only have to get past the first trimester before you can start drinking again, though. So.
Fair enough.
It's okay.
Well, if you're a Lannister and you're going to dive headfirst into the shallow gene pool that is your bloodline, what the hell is a little fetal alcohol syndrome to go with that twisted DNA you have going on? Who's going to notice? He's missing a leg. It's not like you're going to take the brunt of it like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't have been drinking that wine. I shouldn't have been fucking my brother. It's more along the lines of what we should be blaming here. IG, from the files of Oh, You Fucking Better Not, Sir Bronn of the Blackwater is offered a hefty sum of money and that infamous crossbow to deal with Queen Cersei's treasonous brothers. You and I are both huge Bronn fans. But could he? Would he? And what if he does? Would Bronn kill either one of the brothers Lannister?
No, neither one of them. Not in a million years will he do it. And the other part of that is he's been screwed by Cersei before, and even if they paid him in advance, maybe he's just going to consider that payment for services already rendered, because he got screwed out of the things he was already given. Yeah, he's just going to take the gold, and maybe he's going to use that to fund some defense for the brothers Lannister, because I don't see, with everything that he's gone through with both Tyrion and Jaime, that there is any way that he's going to befall any harm to either one of them. Now, you send him to kill just about anybody else, he might give it a shot. But those two, not a chance.
What's the name of her hand? Is it Qyburn?
Qyburn.
Is he not turning into the fucking Emperor, Ryan? I mean, he's bringing the crossbow. He's like, yes, just kill them all.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting scene for a number of reasons. The conversation, which I guess what I was reading online was probably Ed Sheeran's character is the one that has no eyelids now. And
how does he sleep?
Yeah, but the whole scene was weird. I that might make it, I mean, depending, the pace of the season seems to be crazy, or seems like it will get crazy, I should say. But it'll be interesting to see the kind of moral dilemma that Bronn has, because he does have an affection for Tyrion and for Jaime, and they're now on the other side, and he's being paid handsomely to kill them. So it'll be interesting to see what he does, what choice he makes. I would hope he doesn't. I think Bronn's still one of my favorite characters in the show. And I think deep down he has a heart. And there are plenty of times where he could have turned his back on either of them. And I think he'll, at the end of the day, he'll take his money, hopefully get his castle and his wife, and, that'll be that.
Yeah, you offer him higher and he may think about it. I think the three people he wouldn't kill is the two of them in Pod. I just don't see him killing either of the three. He seems to have an affection for him, and it's probably the closest thing he has to actual friends. I'm going to put it out there. If he does, I'm going to be devastated because I love him as a character, and it would make no sense. Speaking of Rush, though, what is dead may never die, but kill the bastards anyway. Theon saves Yara in a really well done but brief scene that only highlights their complex relationship, but also defines Theon's whole existence, because he finally does the right thing and he's promptly headbutted for his effort. Kim, we spoke in the past about relationships with siblings being difficult, but do you think Yara let Theon go because she sees him aiding the Stark as his path to redemption?
I think it's so loaded. There's so much to unpack right there. And you're right, it was rushed, but there's so much that's crammed into it. She's always been very straight to the point, and whatever it is that's bothering her, she kind of gets it out of her system relatively quick. She knows it's her brother. She thought he was dead. He's there. She's trying to wrap her head around all of that really quick, and she understands the situation that she's in already is dire, and she doesn't want to have any more to do with Euron. She's pissed, that this entire thing, she's tied up on a pole in the bottom of a ship, for Christ's sake. Despite the past, she's able to put it behind her relatively quick. They're able to move forward, and I feel like she understands the full scheme of what's about to come, and she knows that they're going to need to retreat to somewhere, and they need to divide and conquer. They need to split their efforts. They need to, she's going to go this way, he's going to go that way, and hopefully, when the White Walkers start heading south, that, there's somewhere for them to retreat to, and she does mention that.
Well, IG, I'm going to bring that up to you. Do you think she is preparing for them to have some place to retreat, or do you think that July 4th is now canceled on the Iron Islands because the whole family has PTSD now?
I'm not sure that either one of those is true. I think that she's going back to the Iron Islands to retake it. I think that's absolutely true because no one is there to defend it. She's got her force. She's going to go back. I think she's going to let Theon take a few with him, just because you can't let your brother travel alone. Even though she headbutted him, that's still her brother. She cares for him. I think should they start heading south and go to the Iron Islands, she would let them in, but I don't think that's her only reason for going there. I think it's more that she wants her home back, and she wants to get ready in case Euron ever comes back, because he deserves an ass kicking for everything he's done.
The brain trust of Davos, Tyrion, and Varys talk marriage between Jon and Dany, and we can't see ghosts, but there's always time for a dragon ride. Ryan, is there any way that we're getting you on the back of a dragon without a saddle, no matter what your attraction is to their mother? And can you see the relationship between Jon and Dany being able to withstand the things that they're about to learn about each other?
Yes, I would probably get on a dragon because that would be crazy and amazing. But to answer the more serious question, again, there's so much going on that I think that they're both going to put aside the questions about their relationship, both between each other and to each other until they defeat the White Walkers. But I think there's a lot there. I think even though a lot of people are going to try to push Jon to be, you're the rightful heir, I don't think that he's going to just accept that. So I see it as him either ruling with her, together, or him just kind of ceding, the throne to her altogether. Does their relationship follow through? Yes, I think in this world they can have a relationship. It's part of the Targaryen history. They're both Targaryens. I think to answer that, I think that everything can survive. They'll potentially be together. I think my biggest issue is that I just don't quite feel the chemistry with them. And that's what I was trying to get to earlier. Like I just don't quite. It's not the same as like Jon and Ygritte, and I think it feels a little forced. And maybe part of it's that we, even though we watched last season, it's been so long that it kind of feels like it's still fresh and starting over, even though they've been around each other for a long time. But I just don't quite feel it. But again, I mean, there's so much going on, and with the threat from the north, like until that happens, until we're kind of dealing with the aftermath, again, it's all kind of moot. Doesn't matter. They may not survive.
We talk about titles, Kim, but like we said, the danger is imminent. Do we really have time to make goo-goo eyes at each other and go for a leisurely dragon ride while the world's crumbling around you?
No, and to backpedal just a smidge back to Euron and this interaction with Cersei. When he's standing in front of her at the throne, he mumbles something to himself. I had to go back and listen to it a couple times in order to hear what he says, but he says, what do you say? I'm with a crew full of mutes. They're not very good fighters anyway. You won't miss them. And, so there's that's happening. And I thought, well, that's a healthy dose of foreshadowing, that here's this group of this militant group that Cersei's really, truly depending on that's coming in that may be absolutely horrid. And then you have this other spark of a relationship, this sidetrack between Jon and Daenerys. I don't know. I just think that we don't have time for this. Bran was like right on, when he was looking at his brother, his cousin, however you want to put that now, Sansa and Jon Snow. And he says, we don't have time for this. The White Walkers are coming. They have one of your dragons, da, 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 da. Like he's trying to give them a sense of urgency with his voice of modulation, mute tones, but there is no time for it. No, for God's sake, stop tracing a dragon and come back down to earth and let's, win this stuff.
Danger, Jon Snow, danger.
That's right.
IG, as much as they nailed the Arya and Hound reunion, did the Gendry and Arya one fall a little flat? I mean, flirt, make this weapon for me, flirt, I'll talk to you later. Could we have spent a little more time on it, seeming that they were the better part of half a season together?
Yeah, they really could have. I mean, just her just being so happy to see him would have played out a little bit more. It didn't seem like she was all that interested, and we all know that she probably was, at least as far as a friend that has basically returned from nowhere. That was one of my most disappointing moments in a show that didn't have very many. This was a great episode, but they really could have played that a little bit better. Of course, Gendry can make whatever weapon she wants. If she's got a plan, he can make it because he's shown the ability to be awesome as a blacksmith. And he's shown the ability to actually hold his own on a battlefield. I'm just hoping that we get a little more of the human side of that at some point here because, Arya showed in that season how much more she cared about him and literally put people on her list because of what they did to him.
Ryan, did you get a feel of what kind of weapon she wanted made? Did you kind of pause it and take a look at the plans, or what do you think she's up to?
It seems like some kind of projectile weapon, I think, but I don't know. I'd like to see what she's got in mind. She's interesting. I guess she's like, did she design it? Did she have some design it? Like, I do want to know what it is, what it's for, how she would use it. Is there an advantage for her as a faceless man to use a weapon like that? So yeah, it definitely is interesting. She's certainly armed. She's got needle, a Valyrian steel dagger, and whatever this cool, interesting weapon is. So she's certainly going to be, ready for battle.
You bring that up, and I did find that interesting during the reunion when Jon shows her Lunclaw. She doesn't take the dagger out, the Valyrian dagger that she has on her right side, and show it to him. And I found that kind of interesting, and maybe they did it for time, but, he's bragging about having a Valyrian weapon. and she has one too, and she doesn't show her hand. So I think it's more kind of poker playing from Arya. I do want to see what she's up to, though. Kim, in a world full of men swinging swords at Jon Snow's head, it's always the women that abuse him the worst. Shoot arrows in him, put him on the back of a saddleless dragon, browbeat him for his lack of knowledge in all things. But Lady Mormont has nothing on Sansa. Poor Jon has a complicated tag on every relationship status. Is it his inability to lie to women is undoing?
I don't know if you guys caught this, but in the opening with the new intro, there's one little scene, and there's like a bar coming across, and there's like 3 figures on it, and one of them is a lion and a fish, or a lion eating a fish, and it was like the Lannister killing a Tully. The dire wolf being hung was like a Stark, and then the White Walker holding a lion head, and that could have been like, it was, I don't know if it's pre-telling, scenes from what could come, but if you spend enough time and you sit and you watch something over and over again, you start picking up on all these great little details that they threw in there. As far as his relationship with women go, I think that he, in looking at those finite details and seeing how the interaction went with my queen, my, your grace, also your grace, I don't think that that's necessarily an issue. I think he handled himself well. I think he's learned a lot. And I genuinely don't think that he's off track. I think he's focused. I think he's probably one of the only people that really truly understands the severity of the nature of what's going on. And I'm really hoping that he just he doesn't allow that to interfere, like what Sansa was saying, or Arya, don't forget we're family. Never forget that. I'm just hoping that doesn't play into it later and kind of cloud his judgment.
He has a lot of experience in managing groups of people who have completely divergent ideas on what they should be doing. And he's generally been pretty successful navigating that and keeping people focused on the task at hand. He did it, he did it, in the fighting, for the Wall. He did it when he was with the wildlings. He did it, when he left the Wall to go win back Winterfell. He's kind of done over and over. He's been able to kind of keep these very, very tenuous ties between groups in order to achieve whatever the task at hand is. So I think that he knows how to handle that. And so in some situations, you just kind of have to, you take the verbal lashing, but at the end of the day, everybody's still focused on fighting the White Walkers. And so, yeah, it looks bad for him getting, thrashed by Lyanna Mormont and then by Sansa and even, a little bit disappointment from Arya. But at the end of the day, they're not fighting each other. They may not like each other. There may be disagreements, but they all seem focused on fighting the White Walkers. And he does seem to have this ability throughout the years to bring people together. Again, there will be plenty of questions and disagreements and potential fights to happen after the fight, but it seems like he's accomplishing what he needs to accomplish, and he's very good at that. And he just takes it and goes with it to achieve whatever the goal is.
IG, though, he's the world's worst poker player because she's like, well, you did do this for the North, right? Not because you're warm for reform, right? There was no answer forthcoming. We know that he did it for the North, but do you think him being, as I said, warm for reform played into his decision?
I think it absolutely did. I think he sees that something's going to happen. And as things are set right now, when you've got fully formed, fully grown dragons and the Unsullied at your back, the chance that you're not going to win the quote-unquote Game of Thrones is pretty low. So if you're going to hitch your wagon, maybe you should hitch it to the winning team. That, and she seems to like him a little bit, and he doesn't know that it's his aunt. And even if he does, if he follows the Targaryen way, because he is a Targaryen, they're blissfully known for all their inbreeding. They did it for thousands of years. So I guess it could work that way. I mean, this is a different world. We always base things upon our morals and everything. And it's like, oh, that's your aunt, that's your sister, that's your cousin. That's our morals. That may not be the morals of Westeros. So we just need to keep that in mind when we're looking at these things. Them ending up together is a strong possibility in the show. I think it's probably not going to happen. Something's going to happen to one or the other of them. That's just my thought. But yeah, it's more than just that's the winning team. He does have a very severe fondness for her as well, and maybe pure unadulterated love as far as that goes.
Well, in Game of Thrones Tinder, the Lannisters and Targaryens always swipe right on family members. Ryan, well, with my dad gone, I guess now that my brother's Lord, I can go home again? Not so fast, Samwell. Was Dany skewing a little dark side when she goes to thank Sam for saving Jorah, but then goes full Targaryen when she finds out about his Tarly roots?
I don't think it was intentional. I think there are those hints of the dark side in her, and they come up. They show it to their face, and in that situation, like, she wasn't going to back down from what she did. I mean, there's a world where she could have handled it a little bit with a little bit more care, but I don't think
every world she could have handled it better in every fucking world.
But she didn't, and she's very straightforward. And even in that little scene where she makes that snide remark to Sansa, like, the darkness in her creeps up, and it scares you a little bit, because like she does kind of have this sense of kind of entitlement, and that, you know, it is hers. And I do fear that if there is a conflict with her and Jon, it will not end well for Jon, or anyone really. And so you know, there are the glimpses of the kind of Mad Queen in her, and yeah, that was that was probably to me the best acted scene of the entire show. I mean, I'm sorry, the entire episode, because you kind of see them all three playing different roles and in different moments, realizing things. And there's a lot of subtle acting, with very, you know, without words, where you're seeing them realize stuff. You're seeing, you know, when Jorah, more than Dany, who's just kind of I'm dark and I'm gonna reveal this information to you. But you know, with Jorah, when he kind of realizes, oh crap, this is not a good situation, and then, you know, the realization for Sam when it's like, oh, my dad said, oh, that sucks. You know, he still genuinely has affection for him, but then he kind of makes a joke of it, and then when he realizes his brother's dead, it really tugged at you, and I think that was probably the best acted scene of the entire episode there.
Well, and there was a friend of Kim's on Facebook that basically said whenever Sam doesn't like somebody, I find myself not liking them too. And you have to kind of wonder if she's just the villain right now in Sam's story, or is she really headed down a path of her family, which is kind of win at any cost, maintain at any cost, and burn anybody that disagrees with us. Sam delivers some pretty heavy news to Jon about his heritage, and Dany Thanosing half of Team Tarly. But under the circumstances, do you think Aegon took the news well? And do you think Daenerys would give up her crown to save the people?
I think he took the news about as well as anyone could be expected to. I mean, let's just be generous and say he's like 24, 25 years old, lived his whole life believing he's a bastard, believing he's the son of Eddard Stark, and living among House Stark, and just like reticent, and has to go join the Wall, and has to forgive all land and titles and everything else, and has gone through everything he's gone through as Jon Snow, to be told that you all along, you should be the one sitting in the seat right now. You're the rightful heir. You always have been. You should be the one in the Iron Throne just by birthright alone. I think any one of us put in that position, living our whole life thus far one way, being told that, well, this is the actual truth, would have a little bit of a hard time taking that. And I think he took it as well as anybody could. I think, though, at this point, everything that Daenerys has been through, it would make her less likely to just up and go, oh, well, here, you get to be in charge now. She's been through her share of stuff, too, basically sold to Khal Drogo, had many attempts on her life, had to basically free a couple of big major cities from slavery and then have revolts against her there. So while Jon Snow's had it rough, Daenerys hasn't basically lived on a palace and glass slippers and silver spoon in her mouth. I don't know as it would be right just by birthright alone to dethrone her at this point. However, I think it might be better now, even if they didn't marry or whatever, start some type of relationship that would allow them to both co-rule. I think that's going to be a little more difficult because that's not what this world is built around, but that's where I would see the most logical way to go about this, because I don't think they should marry each other. I mean, Jon had his one love and lost her, and just settling for Daenerys. I mean, I know they're having a physical relationship right now. I still think it's settling.
And for Daenerys, it's about breaking the wheel. So I don't think, technically in the, West, in the way things are supposed to be, Jon would be next in line because he's a male. But Daenerys is the heir, especially in this kind of sense that she, I don't care about the rules. And I think she's strong-headed enough that I don't see her ceding it to Jon, especially not what she's been through. I think she feels it's her birthright. She deserves it. And, at a minimum, they might co-rule, but I see no world where she says, oh, wow, okay, well, I guess we're going to, it's yours. I'll step aside. That absolutely won't happen. And, I think, we're going to see it. I think it really comes down to what Jon wants. If Jon wants the throne, which I doubt he would just decide, I deserve it, then there might be a battle between them. That would be something fairly interesting. But otherwise, I think, it's hers. It's hers to lose or to give up.
And not only that, I mean, now that the story's out, how do you sell it to everybody? Oh, well, Sam found this information and Bran knows everything, so we put it together. I mean, that's going to be a hard sell. But Kim, do you think there is a world where Dany just gives up the crown to somebody that just claims to be the rightful heir? She's been sold this since birth.
I think that, one, when Sam is telling Jon this in the crypt, and he's received this news, he's taken a second to, what? It's sinking in what was just told to him. It was said right in front of the statue of Ned Stark. And when he turns around, he gives a look directly into the eye of the statue, I know what my place is despite this news that I just heard. I kind of get the feeling if there is going to be a future relationship between the two of them, that perhaps it's one where he's taking a page out of Arya's book and not showing her full hand. Perhaps this isn't news that he ends up telling other people, because I feel like he loves Daenerys, and maybe he's just going to let her run with it because he knows that his future is going to be beside her and he'll be ruler anyway.
Is there any benefit to him telling this tale? It's basically going to throw everything out of whack, all best laid plans. And he never wanted to lead anything to begin with. He didn't want to be, the head of the Night's Watch. He didn't want to be King of the North. Why would he want to be the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms if there's somebody in his stead that could do it just as well, and somebody that he basically has their ear? It would make no sense for him to. I would tell Sam to sit on it, and we'll see how this goes, and we'll deal with it after we determine if everybody's going to die or not. Stay back. He has blue eyes. I've always had blue eyes. Kim, given the Night King's massive army and his Banksy-like artistic flair for the dramatic, is there any way that any of the living survive this war?
Yes. Here's my theory on this. Before, if you tuned in and you were watching it live, I don't know if on DVR it picked it up, but there was a recap that HBO played before the countdown. Right before that, Bran rolls his eyes back in his head, eyes turn white, and then the very next scene is the eyes opening blue of the dragon. And so it kind of makes me feel like maybe, who knows? I didn't read the books, but perhaps there is a possibility there where he either takes possession of the dragon or, I don't know. There's so many different directions this could head into, and my head's swirling with these ideas, and so many people were chiming in on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and with all their theories and whatnot, it could go any direction. They don't always follow books. Well,
the Three-Eyed Raven does tell him that he'll fly, so it's not a bad theory that he becomes that he wargs into a dragon.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, wargs into an undead dragon, though, that'd be the coolest shit ever, and that would be pretty bad for the White Walkers. I think if that happened, that would be end game for them. I think the
path to victory has got to be, look, it's going to be Jon and the Night King going one-on-one. I think that's it. At some point, they got to do battle. If he kills the Night King, does that do all the other whites and White Walkers die? I mean, we know that White Walker is responsible for a certain amount of whites. You kill the White Walker, the whites die. So if you kill the Night King, so I'm assuming that we do get the epic one-on-one battle between the Night King and Jon at some point. I mean, it's just been leading to this over the last, few seasons. So that'll be it, I think.
Ryan, it turns out that Bran's old friend was Jaime. And we finished this episode, Season 8, Episode 1, just like we did the pilot with Bran and Jaime. Your final thoughts on their reunion, the episode, and your rating?
Well, again, it was a great callback in the very beginning and the very end to Episode 1. I think they did a really good job with that. So, this is my favorite show. I would probably argue that it's the best show ever. And so this season's been highly anticipated. And I'm a little bit mixed on this episode. I think it was... it's a strong episode. There are a lot of great scenes. We have some great reunions. I think the problem is that we've only got 6 episodes left. We've been waiting almost 2 years, and it felt too much like a first episode of a season. And yeah, I get it. It's the first episode of the season, but we needed to hit the ground running. Like I wanted this episode to just things to get moving. Like, and I feel like it spent too much time kind of setting the stage and setting the table. And look, it's like at the end of the day, we know where people are. We know the status. I just want things to move. And so, in that way, it felt a little bit, it just didn't feel, it felt a little off. Like I was a little disappointed in that way. I also just find a little bit of the dialogue's a little flat. It doesn't quite have the wit that it's had in seasons past. And I mentioned with Tyrion, but just some of it's not quite up to par. So, I'm hoping that changes and we get a little bit better. There's some kind of dumb jokes and some people not quite acting the way they should act. I think he's got blue eyes thing just didn't make sense. Tyrion's eunuch joke, there's stuff that kind of bugged me a little bit. The biggest thing is I wanted Lyanna Mormont and Jorah to have some kind of interaction. They're cousins. Jorah left, and really, he should have his head chopped off as soon as she sees him. So, I mean, obviously, he's pardoned, I would assume, but I wanted some interaction with them. She was there. They were in the same space. And I'm like, they're there. Something, give me something, but nothing. So that bugged me a little bit. Otherwise, though, it sounds like I'm down on the show. It was still a strong episode. And for Game of Thrones, maybe this is a middle of the road episode, but middle of the road still gets you a 7.5 from me. So, solid 7.5. I do think that I'm really excited for the rest of the season. We got 5 episodes left. I hope that, again, we just hit the ground running and we have some epic stuff for the next 5 episodes. But yeah, 7.5 is my grade.
Kim, your thoughts on the Jaime Bran reunion, your final thoughts, and your rating of the episode?
I thought Jaime was going to probably shit himself when he saw Bran just sitting there, like this is who he's been waiting to make eye contact this whole time. Like you tried to kill me. I just thought that was awesome. And, all in all, let's see, you had Euron, Theon, Arya and Jon, Mormont, Tully, Jon and Tully, Jaime and Bran, Dormont and Barak, I think. But there was like 6 major reunions in the episode. For an episode that was just shy of an hour, I really feel like they did a good job packing as much as they could into it. I think the storyline kind of progressed forward pretty well. I think the reason for perhaps the flat dialogue could be because it's supposed to be the calm before the storm. That's why they were showing all this love and relationships are starting to blossom and there's the potential for babies and maybe that's that last little bit of potential hope that they're going to see before all hell breaks loose, So I kind of feel like that was the tie up of season 7 leading into this massive war that's coming. It's the calm before the storm and everything's about to break loose. I'm so excited to see what happens next. I love this show. Absolutely adore it. And like I said, for something that was just shy of an hour long, I think they did a great job cramming as many details in as they did, and especially all the little Easter eggs that were hiding all over the place. For me, it's probably a 9.5. I think it was fantastic. There were a couple things that were lackluster, but still very solid.
All right, so the meeting between Jaime and Bran. Now, Bran is sitting there looking at him, and Jaime's about to shit his pants. But let's be real. Bran wouldn't be the three-eyed raven had he not gotten pushed out of that window. his whole path would be different. They might not have a chance at surviving everything that's coming at them had that not happened. That single act that happened in the very first episode. I think Bran knows this and holds no ill will toward Jaime for it. And it's just going to take a moment of speech about why it's not that bad of a thing that happened and it's actually a very good thing. There was a lot in this episode, and I'm pissed off because nobody of any importance died in this episode, which means it's going to happen multiple fold in further episodes, and it's going to be too much for my heart to handle. I've grown too attached to all these characters. It's going to be rough, folks. That being said, this was a good episode. Like Kim said, all of the reunions and bringing people back together, the way they put it back together, yeah, the writing was a little bit flat, but I think that's because they needed to push things a little faster because, like Ryan said, we only have 6 episodes. Some of them are going to be a little longer. I think we've got some that are closer to the 90-minute mark in this season. This wasn't one of them. But this was a good ending point to lead into the things that we have going forward. We're setting the stage. The players are on the board, and I think we're ready to go here. I really enjoyed the episode, even despite the couple of the small things that we spoke about during this podcast, but it was fun. It was a good time, and I'm still going to give it an 8.5. I really did enjoy it, and it's a great Game of Thrones episode.
I think Ryan has post-celebration hangover, giving this episode a 7.5. I'm dying, literally dying right here and now to see what happens next between Jaime and Bran, and the fact that they're going to haul Jaime in, and he's going to have to explain why he's the only Lannister present and accounted for. It's going to be as uncomfortable as it comes, and I love uncomfortable. The preview for next week's episode looks amazing, and I don't think the Kingslayer's quite done facing the music yet. I thought this episode was great. I enjoyed all the reunions. Felt terrible for Jon for all the flack he was taking over making the impossible decision. Got some weird vibes from Dany during the Sam scene, and her bedside manner is straight garbage. Thought Euron took a step back as a villain. Even though he got to sleep with the queen, I think he lost a step in his game and was completely bummed for Cersei that she didn't get her elephants. I want her to get her elephants as much as I want to see Bronn get a castle. Winterfell was a well-told story with a lot of emotional ups and downs and connected perfectly to the pilot episode. I give it a 9. It was a strong start to the finale of a season of the masterpiece we call Game of Thrones.
And that's it for this episode of the Cinik Radio Podcast. I'm Igrihe. We had a great time bringing you this week's show. Please send all your comments, questions, concerns, and any crazy news stories from your neck of the woods to CINIKRADIO@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CINIKRADIO.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. And find us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. Continue to like, listen, subscribe, and share this with all your friends and family. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.